I'm now joined by Ambassador Javed Ashraf. Thanks, sir, very much for being with us, you along with so many watching the situation closely. Yeah. What is the potential, sir, in your opinion, of this escalating?
There are so many different possibilities. One, of course, is that there will be a direct escalation between Iran and Israel, and that is already taking place. But there will, of course, you'll have to now factor in Iran's. Of course, it doesn't have any air power. Its air defense has been decimated, so it's relying entirely on its missile systems. Now, it depends on how much stock it still has. Some say it has about 2,000 missiles and launchers, but how many have been destroyed, and how many it has used, and therefore that will also determine its staying capacity. But one can expect that there will be an intensification of its response on Israel. The next question is whether it will take any steps against the United States. Now, that I think it will be very cautious about, because for two reasons. One, at the moment, U.S. opinion is very divided on U.S. getting into another war in the Middle East, but if it directly attacks and hurts United States interests, I think there will be a much larger U.S. Support for it, and therefore a much higher level of U.S. response. If you recall, when Qasem Soleimani was taken out in 2020, Israel responded with a barrage of missiles to two bases in Iraq, and then it said it's reached a closure, didn't do much damage to the United States at that stage. Could it then therefore also try to do something in the Straits of Hormuz? That would, of course, further isolate it, at least as far as some countries are concerned, and some of its supporters currently that at least are giving diplomatic support or endorsing its position with regard to the violation of international law would perhaps not be happy. China in particular, which relies a lot on that. So it'll have to weigh that consideration also taking this forward. Will it try to hit at some of the U.S. bases, etc.? As I said, that could invite massive retaliation and may have collateral damage on some of the Gulf countries that are actually, at this point of time, quite alarmed by the Israeli and the U.S. interest. And finally, what it could also happen is that there would be a sharp increase in the escalation from both sides. And then at the same time, there could be some back channel efforts to bring this to some sort of an end, because Israel has at least achieved one objective of setting back the nuclear program for at least some time. But the idea of a regime change, I think it gets a throwback to the era of neocons at the turn of the century. And that is, as you've seen in Iraq and you've seen elsewhere in Libya and various places, are fraught with grave risks for the region, for Iran, and I think for the world at large.
Ambassador Ashraf, before we come to divided Washington and how that could impact Trump administration's future policy from here on, I want to ask two specific questions. One regarding a very important meeting that will take place between President Putin and the Iranian foreign minister tomorrow. How do you think that is likely to change the calculus? And also the phone call that took place between the Iranian President and Prime Minister Modi a short while back, where dialogue and diplomacy was stressed upon by the Prime Minister. How do you see these two in terms of the impact and the larger ramification?
Well, as far as the first is concerned, I think that both Russia and China may at best provide tacit support, some sort of a support in maintaining or sustaining military capabilities. But it is not, neither of the two is going to be directly get involved in this war. That is, would be the most surprising thing as far as I'm concerned, both because of the way they normally operate, but also because of the current set of circumstances that both countries are facing. But some level of support that would be material or in terms of military nature, and in terms of putting diplomatic pressure through the UN Security Council and internationally will be there. I think there is a great opportunity for both China and Russia to expand their diplomatic space internationally, as we see a world increasingly getting fragmented between the West and the rest, at least the South and the East. And that brings us to India. Because, what I see here is that Prime Minister, of course, rightly had a very important conversation. I think he has been rightly insisting from the very beginning on the need for de-escalation, dialogue and diplomacy. He said that, of course, to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he has said this to Iranian president now. And I think for us, it's a very complex situation, not just because of the nature of relationship that we enjoy with both Iran and Israel. I think we don't treat the Middle East and the Gulf region as our neighborhood. But if you just look at the map and see the distance from Indian coast to Iran, it's 543 nautical miles. You see the entire Gulf region is actually some way as close as some of our southern states are. And so, therefore, I think this is a region that you're really seeing a war in our own neighborhood. We've got about 10 million people in the Gulf. We get the highest level of remittances from there. It's still a very major source of energy, oil, and gas for us. It's a major market for us. And I think the strategic importance of this region for us is as high as it would be for South Asia. And therefore, for us, this is a matter of very, very serious concern. Now, are we in a position to play any kind of a role in the actually bringing about a de-escalation or an end to this? I don't think that is possible.
All right,
for
Ambassador
us.
Ashraf, I'm just interrupting you now just to tell our viewers that in the next 8 minutes we expect a press conference from the Pentagon. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, among others, expected to talk about the impact of the American strikes. They've also this new reaction coming in now from Iran. Let's just listen in.
The Islamic Republic of Iran condemns in the strongest terms the United States' brutal military aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. It is an outrageous, grave, and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. While President Trump was elected on a platform of putting an end to America's costly involvement of forever wars in our part of the world, he has betrayed not only Iran by abusing our commitment to diplomacy, but also deceived his own voters by submitting to the wishes of a wanted war criminal.
All right, the Iranian foreign minister over there, speaking defiantly, but also at a certain stage suggesting that the path towards conversations isn't necessarily over. We've heard that elsewhere from the Iranians today as well. Ambassador Ashraf, thanks very much for being with us.